Hi, I'm Nicole Kreitz in our First Alert news desk in the AZ Family Newsroom, and we are standing by for a special roundtable talk with some of the stakeholders in the zone, that massive homeless encampment in downtown Phoenix. The city is under court order to clear the area. Some activists say these people have rights and they have nowhere to go. Business owners, neighbors, even some people living down there say it's just not safe. Today, what we hope to accomplish is take a look at where we are in the zone, get a status update, take a look at short and long-term solutions and the struggles. We're going to hear from the city, business owners, and nonprofits. So I'd like to introduce my guests who are joining us today. Scott Hall is the Deputy Director of Homeless Solutions. Give us a wave here, Scott. There you are. Thank you for being here. Richard Cruz, go ahead and give us a wave, Richard. He's the program director at HSC, the Human Services Campus. If you're not familiar, it's a collaboration of 16 different organizations working together every day. They've been in the downtown corridor working to try and find solutions for folks who are experiencing homelessness. And then we've got Ross Polito. Give us a wave, Ross.
How you doing?
We appreciate you making time to speak with us today. He is a downtown Phoenix business owner at Element Architectural Metals. This is east of the zone. And we're going to be talking with them at great length here about solutions and struggles that we're seeing in the zone. Let's go ahead and take a look at this story that kind of sets the scene of how we got here and where we're at. Tents, tarps, trash, grocery carts packed full of belongings, cars strewn with sheets and clothes. At the post-pandemic peak, there were nearly 1,000 people living in this downtown Phoenix encampment known as the Zone.
A lot of people that I talk to use fentanyl so they don't go to sleep. They use meth so they don't go to sleep at nights to get robbed and to get beat up.
I'm a woman, so people coming into the tent, when you're by yourself, it's very unsafe.
There have been countless police call-outs for rampant drug use, violence, a fetus found in the street, a man shot, another beaten, then burned alive in a dumpster. Fire crews don't even go in without a police escort.
We want to be able to walk the streets safely, drive down the streets safely, and we just want a normal neighborhood, and this is not normal.
Nearby businesses and neighbors sued, saying the city was maintaining a public nuisance, and now the city of Phoenix is court-ordered to take action to clear the streets.
I honestly don't think that they're doing it right.
The city of Phoenix is already under investigation by the Department of Justice for destroying personal belongings in previous homeless street sweeps, and the ACLU sued to stop the cleanup, saying it violates basic human decency when there aren't even enough shelter beds as an alternative to the sidewalks and pavement. So crews have been working in phases, clearing smaller sections as shelter beds open.
We were able to offer, female shelter, family shelter, specialty population, youth, people with domestic violence issues, male and female storage opportunities. We were able to offer all these things today to everybody, so very grateful for all those providers that stepped up to help out.
Helping people transition one at a time off the streets.
This isn't a long-term solution. It's a necessary step that the city is taking.
Mental health and addiction have some flat out refusing services, and there's nothing to stop any of them from simply picking up and moving down the block, a complex community issue that cannot be ignored. So I want to go ahead and bring up a map that we've put together to give you an idea of this area, the zone that we're talking about. It is a pretty large area. It's Jefferson South to Harrison, or the railroad tracks there, and then 16th Avenue east to 7th Avenue. So if you're not familiar with this area, just as you look at that red zone there, on the eastern end is or on the western end, I should say, is like Pioneer Park, the HSC campus, and Cass. There's St. Joseph the Worker, St. Vincent de Paul's down there. And this is, of course, east of the state capitol in Wesley Boland Plaza, just west of the court complex, and several blocks west of Footprint Center and Chase Field in downtown Phoenix. Now, it's impacting a lot of folks, not just the people who live immediately nearby or work immediately nearby, but it is a problem that I think everyone in the valley, it doesn't matter if you're in the city of Phoenix or outside the valley proper, it's something that we can all relate with and recognize that we have a vested interest in finding solutions here. So let's start with you, Richard, how we got here, because we started to see the tents crop up in that corridor in the zone during the pandemic.
Yeah, so I think I'm frozen. It looks like my camera's frozen. I'm not
Your
sure.
camera may be
Okay.
frozen, but we can hear you. We'll get to working
Okay.
on that on our end. Sorry about that.
Okay. Yes. So how we get here? You know, we get here in the midst of the pandemic. Also, like really, I remember before the pandemic, driving down Madison, and I would see tents slowly start creeping down Madison, right? Then we hit the pandemic, and in the midst of the pandemic, we worked with the county, with Scott, in fact, to make sure that
Sure.
we had a proper response to the pandemic, because we didn't want to make sure people didn't die, right? I mean, you know, when we go back to 2020, nobody knows what's about to happen in this particular moment, right? And so being able to, you know, so that we have what we call the safe outdoor space that we partnered with the county. But then once we get past that, you know, we've seen just the numbers increase. So when I first got to the campus in June 1st of 2020, you know, working with Scott, we saw the numbers, and I had this bold goal that we would have no unsheltered homelessness in the what you all call the zone by December 31st of 2020. And then by December 31st of 2020, that number, instead of being at 200, was about 555, right? And then by May, that number climbed up to 1,000, right? And a lot of that has to do with the housing rates that we see, with rents going up, with mental illness issues, with just like there's a lot of things that are happening, and you know, there's just not enough housing stock. Luckily, we've been able to partner with the city around creating more shelter beds, around finding more creative solutions, so that this way people have a place to go. But if you can't go anywhere else in the city, then like where else do you end up at?
Where are you going to go? Yeah.
Where are you going to go? And so, you know, we've seen these numbers swell in this particular space. And so we're all working together to figure out how we make this, you know, how we find solutions that are workable for all parties while still holding people's humanity at the same time.
And real quickly, because we've seen the numbers fluctuate. I mean, I think we at one point were saying 800, more than 700, but nearly 1,000. But what was the peak count? I think I had heard someone from HSC saying that there are some 2,000 people in the downtown corridor who are homeless.
Okay, so you would have those that are sheltered on the campus, right? So you've got 600 that are sheltered within CAS, and then roughly another 300 between overflow shelters and Respiro, our sprung structure shelter that's on campus. And then you've got another 1,000 people outside, right? At its peak. So yes, you've had, the numbers are roughly, you know, we're talking roughly just under 2,000 people.
Okay, and let's go ahead and bring in Ross, because when we talk about, you know, seeing, initially we kept hearing from people, it's an eyesore, it's a hazard, you know, it's a health hazard, all this. What are you hearing as a business owner? What are you hearing from the other businesses? What are you hearing from the neighbors about how this has impacted life downtown?
Well, I'll be honest, I'm far enough away to where I don't think I get any of the direct traffic here, but we do have our own homeless issues here.
Yeah.
And I think over the last couple of years, it's grown quite a bit. And I have to agree with Richard. I have no idea what the answer is. If the people have nowhere to go, they have to live somewhere, which is very, very, just as we get much hotter.
Yeah.
Yeah, people do get frustrated where I am. You know, we have the gas stations, and there's a lot of homeless people there right around the corner. But the zone itself, I haven't seen myself, only on.
Okay. Scott, I know that obviously you're running the whole program, but you're also rolling up your sleeves and you are boots on the ground. You've been out there every time your teams are going through and doing these street sweeps. So I think in the last look that I saw, it was in phase 1, 47 of the 60 individuals your teams contacted were able to get into shelter. Can you give us an update on what's the latest and where things stand right now?
Yeah, so that data was correct. Out of 60 individuals on the Endeavor on 9th Avenue, we were able to place 47, which is a great percentage. On our last one, we engaged 44 individuals and we were able to place 37. So our strategy is to go at that pace so that we can ensure that we're able to offer everybody an appropriate indoor space for that next step in their life, right? We know shelter is not the end game for individuals. That's just a stabilization point where we can truly assess someone's need. We can do some assessment out in the field unsheltered, but when we get them inside, we can really work on getting their access benefits, their IDs, their birth certificates, all the crucial vital documentation someone needs to move forward. We can also get them connected to their primary care physician for physical health issues. If they have any substance abuse or mental health issues, we can get them connected. And then also the projects we're standing up, we're reducing barriers in the front end of that. We're creating projects where people can take pets, where people can have partners, where people can store property. And by reducing those barriers, we're seeing the effect in our outcomes as we're engaging with individuals.
It's interesting because you kind of rattled off all those little specific challenges because you're seeing really the gamut of people who have severe mental illness on one hand to others who are just on the precipice of having not enough money to make it on their own. So, and you guys really have to get creative when it comes to answering those individual needs for folks out there. How has it been? How successful has it been once you clear that phase 1, phase 2? I know your teams put up barricades and put up signs. Are people respecting that? Are they staying clear of there? Have you had to hire overnight security to make sure nobody re-enters those areas that you've been able to clear the streets of?
Yeah, prior to the engagements, we had all those conversations, like what was that going to feel like? But what we've proven with this population is that, one, when you create positive environments, they usually respond to it. And two, we have our teams have had great communication with people down there who are unsheltered, and they've been very respectful of the endeavor and the project. So we've had no people try to re-inhabit those areas, and they've been very respectful. We haven't had to do private security. We do go out there. Richard has his outreach teams out there on a daily basis, engaging individuals along with other service providers. So that engagement is constantly ongoing. That engagement doesn't wait for each one of these enhanced engagement opportunities. They're doing this work on a daily basis. A lot of these placements happen prior to the day of the event, right? So we go out and we flyer 2 weeks ahead of time, and we work with those folks for the 2 to 3 weeks ahead of the operation. So what they see on that day of, because all the media is out there on the day of the operation and all that, there's been a lot of pre-work going in prior to that. Notifications, working with people, reducing barriers, getting beds set aside, and all that kind of stuff. So to answer your question, no, people have been very respectful of the boundaries, and we anticipate that going forward.
It's a frustrating numbers game because even at the success rate that you guys are seeing, 37 plus 47, that's still less than 100 of the 800, right, that ultimately need some kind of shelter solution.
Yeah, so I mean, obviously, if everybody stood up all at once and said, "I need this resource," we'd be in a pickle, right? But that's why we're going at this pace. Just in 2022 alone, the city of Phoenix, along with their partners, opened up 600 new shelter beds. And that's just within Phoenix. In 2023 to 2024, we're going to open up over 800 new beds. And again, these are just next step beds. The end game is housing, right? End game for everybody is housing, either if it's a path through shelter, path through treatment, path through getting a job and staying, whatever it means. Ultimately, it ends in housing. When that inventory is as limited as it is now and the prices are, we've kind of log jammed our whole system to where people aren't exiting these crisis interventions at the pace we used to 10 years ago.
Yeah, and we just got word today from the Arizona State Department of Housing that $20 million is being freed up. The governor signed off on $60 million. So $20 million is being expedited before June 30th, which should free up a lot more opportunities, but it is still the realities of those beds that are available. So let's talk, let's bring in Richard again. When we're talking about the specific problems, you've been with HSC for the last 3 years, and you've seen the specific challenges that a lot of these people have. What do you find to be the biggest barrier to them accepting help?
So did that come to me because
that's to you, Richard? Yes.
Okay.
I was like, is he frozen again? Thank you.
My whole system went down. So can you give me that question one more time? And then
that's okay. So in your 3 years that you've been with HSC, what do you find is the biggest barrier? We've talked about addiction. We've talked about mental illness. We've talked about specific things Scott mentioned, like, oh, I've got a dog. Oh, I've got a partner. We want to house together. And there are a lot of like endless possible barriers to accepting or receiving help, what do you find is the number one thing that deters people from just open arms accepting opportunities for shelter?
So you have to understand, in order to get to a space of homelessness, it's not just about individual decisions. It's really some has decided and making decisions and policies and various other things that have created conditions for people to be where they are. And so in that, I talk with my staff a lot about this fact that the insanity of the work is that we are offering hope to people that oftentimes have been failed by everyone who said they were going to help them. So every person who said, I've got you, right? Let them fall. Every single person, right? And so when you have that as the case, now here you are saying, here we are, we've got you, open arms, just like you said, well, you're a broken record in that particular space, right? So it's being able to make connection, right? It's being able to make sure that we're able to meet people where they are. It's being able to see people for their humanity and not just say that, well, you made bad choices and that's what got you here, right? And so all of those are pieces why, if we look at the antithesis of that, why people are rejecting the space, because they've been rejected by all the spaces that they've been in. Then on top of that, we just don't have enough room. So even if everybody said, I'm ready to come and get services, we don't have enough room for all of the people that would need to come off the streets, right? There's not another 800 shelter beds for the 800 folks that are unsheltered. Now, fast forward 2-3 years from now, and we'll definitely be there. But right now, we're not in that particular space. So as a result of that, some of it is just what is the capacity of the system to hold those that are within it, right? And yes, there's all of the things that people talk about. There is addiction, and so there is, do I want to be in a space that says I can't access my drugs, right? There is mental health issues. There are all of these issues that people are experiencing on a day in and day out basis. But really what it comes down to is that the system isn't big enough to be able to hold all of the people that are within it. And so if we were in a small city where we only had 200 to 300 people that were experiencing homelessness, we can knock this out in a week, right? But we're not. We're in the 5th largest city in the country, right? The 4th largest county in the nation, and like what is ultimately like the fastest growing homeless population in the country. And so all of that says like we've got to build a bigger net. And if we don't build a bigger net to be able to support folks, then we can't be surprised when people are spilling out on the side.
And that's not going to happen. That's not going to happen overnight. So let's check in with Ross here. I know that some of the business owners and some of the neighbors had talked about early before they filed that lawsuit, saying like, I'm out there shoveling feces, human waste on my doorstep, and this is not okay. So to be clear, there's been a lot of misunderstanding about what the judge's orders were, and I'm not going to get too in the weeds with that, but the next time this goes to court is July 10th. Now, that doesn't mean that everything has to be buttoned up, clean, no tents, no people out there at all. The judge just requested material results to maintain the right-of-way, no tents, no human waste, biohazards, no needles. Ross, what do you think is reasonable? Hearing the other side of things about like the logistics of this, but also understanding from businesses that are trying to, stay open, and they've got people who are, camped out on their doorstep.
Yeah, and it makes it hard. I think I saw a gentleman who owns a restaurant down, and right in the middle of it, and an older guy. It would be very hard. And I'm fortunate, like I said before, I'm far enough.
You're further east, yeah.
Further east, but we do have a homeless problem around here, and it's hard. It's hard for like good state. A lot of these people, didn't have any help in life. I was fortunate to grow up in a good home and good parents helped me and things like that. And I really don't know what the answer is. I really, really don't. I don't think Richard and Scott do either. And God bless you guys, what you're doing every day and helping people out. Great. I try to, live where I'm at here in my shop. I don't know what to do. I really don't.
What do you want to see though?
Well, what I want to see is everybody has a place to live, and everybody's happy, and everybody has a roof over their head and food in the refrigerator, and getting along. But I don't know how you accomplish that.
Well, it is more than just the things that are being cleaned up out of there. And Scott, I'll bring this back to you because we've seen the bulldozers and the dumpsters down there. But we also know that you guys have been taking when individuals are not there in their tents when they're being taken down. How long do you actually store that property? What has that process been like? Because it's not just clear it, dumpster it, say goodbye. It's a little stickier than that.
Yeah, it's a pretty comprehensive project when it comes to property. I partner closely with Richard and his organization where they store property for individuals who voluntarily go into shelter, and they have excess property that they don't want to get rid of in order to go into shelter, right? Because each shelter has different volumes of property they can take, right, depending on the shelter. So Richard's storage program really takes that barrier out of the way of people, because we don't want to have people give up their family heirlooms, or if they got evicted and give up their things, right?
Right.
But the city of Phoenix has a storage program for people when property is either abandoned or we can't identify who the owner of that property is. If it's not an imminent risk or biohazard, we tag the property for 48 hours, letting them know, you know, like if we don't get notified of somebody with the city of Phoenix will be storing this. If we can't identify a property owner within that 48 hours, the city of Phoenix will then store that property minus the biohazard or explosive things, or, you know, things like that. We will store that stuff for up to 45 days. And if the individual contacts us, we will then deliver that property back to that individual.
Okay, so Richard, on your end, is there property that you've been hanging on to for just weeks, months? What's the long end of that?
Yeah, so you know, it works really the way that Scott said it. Right now, we have our own storage program, and in having that storage program, yes, there are people that have stored their belongings on campus, you know, for months, but that's because they've been homeless for months, right?
Right.
The storage program really exists so that, as Scott said, folks aren't able to, like, it's not their possessions that make it why they can't engage in services, right? Within this particular program, though, if we had somebody who we're not able to get in touch with them, they're not engaging in services, we've done the outreach around trying to find who those individuals are, and we can't find those things, then those are things then like we have to look at doing other things with them. Because then at that point, similar to any other space, if you've truly abandoned your stuff, then
indefinitely hold on to all this stuff that you can't possibly understand where you're going with that. So I want to mention that Phoenix just recently approved the hiring of 14 overnight park rangers. There's been a big concern about displacement. So people who turn down shelter services, when your teams come through, Scott and Richard, when your teams come through and try to get people, when you have folks who refuse shelter services, ultimately it's going to come to the end of those phases, right? And so a lot of folks are just wondering, what's going to happen? Are they just going to crop up in Mesa? Mesa's having a bigger problem. I mean, every city, let's be honest, is dealing with its homelessness problem, and some municipalities have opened up more hotel motels that have now converted into longer term shelter housing or transitional housing for folks who need that assistance. But what steps are we taking now to try and avoid just sheer displacement?
And I'll jump in here first, Richard, if that's okay. So, you know, the extensive amount of engagement we do with individuals, even throughout the city, if someone can't be in a place, again, if it's not imminent risk, biohazard stuff like that, we have that 40-hour notification where we work with an individual on where we can go and all that stuff. And then if the individual is still declining at that time, we truly assess why are they declining. You're right. It's not just because people are trying to be options. There's always an issue. You know, maybe it be addiction. Maybe it be that they've had some trauma from prior experiences in shelter. Maybe they, like Richard said, they were overpromised and people failed on those promises. We have to rebuild that relationship. Sometimes it's just that fear of doing something new. You know, it's the whole gamut. The complexity of reasonings why people either accept or don't accept those services is pretty diverse. But we assess on that individual. We then, if the individual agrees to it, we put them in HMIS where we can then track that individual. We have an outreach tracker where we can identify where people are at, so we can look up prior engagements, and we try to get multiple touches with that individual to see if we can overcome whatever those barriers are.
But ultimately, the city is not allowed to enforce bans on sleeping and camping right now. So I guess it's just hard to say like what it's going to look like on the other side of this, since we're so in the weeds right now of the process, right?
Just from these two last enhanced engagements, you know, there was on the first one, 13 people didn't accept, I think it was, if I'm doing the math correct. And on the last one, there was 7 people that didn't accept.
Okay.
But yet I've gotten phone calls blaming those two efforts on homelessness throughout the county. You know, the other cities have said, well, that's why they're all here now. Like, no, only, you know, less than 20 people didn't accept. I can't imagine that's why every city and every place in the county has seen an increase in homelessness.
Are you able to track where those 13 and 7, those 20, are they just further down in the zone? Do they just
Well,
move
we can track them based off engagement. Obviously, there's no tracker, so when we engage with them, we can track them at that point.
Okay.
So let me
Go
jump.
ahead.
Can I jump in on that? So one, there's a lot of work around the engagement piece, and like what we have to understand is that a lot of the folks that are unsheltered do not want to be unsheltered, right? They want to connect. We've had instances when we start talking about, like, before we got here, when we first started the enhanced cleanups, where folks that were in the zone were moving into the spaces we were doing the cleanups at because they knew that, oh wait, I can get connected and get off of the street. So we have to dispel the myth that folks just don't want to go into shelter, they just don't want to be housed. Like that's a myth, right? Folks want to be connected. Nobody wants to live on the street, because just like the business owners don't like fecal matter being outside of their houses, people don't want to live next to that either, right? And so there's an element of that. So we have to understand there's a lot of folks that are falling into homelessness, right? And falling into homelessness, then like they're trying to be like to get out. So we have to do our part when it comes to having better bridge housing, having more shelter beds, having more affordable housing, right? And there's a number of investments that are happening, both public and private, across the spectrum to be able to make that happen. From a human services campus standpoint, we're doing work both locally and regionally when it comes to the outreach to be able to identify where are people at, where are the people that don't want to be found, where are the people that typically have fallen through the cracks, and be able to connect them to services. Also, countywide, we've been doing an emergency shelter work group so that we can know in the middle of the night who's got a bed no matter where it's at, so that we can, if somebody's full, we can send people to where they need to be, right? So that's also happening. And then as you mentioned, there's a number of hotel projects that are coming up that are operating as bridge housing, so that we're putting more beds in the system. So we can't expect people to move out of their tents if there's nowhere for them to move to. So now we've got to create the places for them to move to at a great rate of speed.
And correct me if this is wrong, but another 200, I think, is on track to imminently by the end of the year, or is it by next summer to open up another 200 beds?
For shelter, Scott, that's
it's hard to put it within the summer because of construction things we're having, but we're hoping to have an additional 200 by the end of the year.
End of the year.
As long as we can overcome all the barriers that keep popping up.
Friends, let's end on a positive note. Can you, each of you, end by sharing a success story? I know that, Richard, you've been in the game pretty long here. So can you share one success story of someone who, you know, came in a hard way and maybe is on a better trajectory now, who's circled back around, and you've been able to see that success story?
So one of the stories I think about, and this is what happens when we all work together. So even just last week, I had somebody had contacted our organization that was terminally ill. They've got cancer, they're stage 4, and they're unsheltered on the streets. We reached out to our team and said, team, what can we do, right? Because we don't want somebody on the streets to, like, for those to be their last moments.
Sure.
Right. And so by the time my managers got here in the morning, some of my navigators, Nettie, who, like, people have seen in various other stories, Nettie had already said, well, I've already got somebody contacted and connected. They had housing approved for the individual, working on getting the insurance portion of it taken care of, so that this way they're able to get the supportive services that they need. So that they're supported and cared for in these last days. Right now, this was something that we learned about on Thursday, activated on Friday, and got housed by Monday.
Wow.
Like that's an amazing thing, right? To be able to do that, and these things are possible when we all work together.
I love that. Scott, I know that might be asking a lot, but if you could take it from your phase 1 to phase 2 and where you are today, have you been able to circle back with your team of somebody maybe in that initial phase who has had a remarkable success story?
Oh, 100%. I got story after story of those successes in there. And, you know, a couple stand out, but there's two I want to mention. One, I want to mention success within this to me is all the people coming to the table offering help and encouragement. We've had the state and the county have always been there with us, but they've even stepped up their game. And I'm very grateful for the governor and for county leadership and other cities partnering with us on this effort. You know, there was an individual who, you know, he's a senior, he was struggling physically, he had a truck that constantly needed daily maintenance, and, you know, he had a relationship with PD squad that was down around there, and they knew him. And when it came to the enhanced engagement on the 9th, he was struggling getting his vehicle going and all this stuff, and he finally was willing to go to shelter. And then 100 yards away from when he pulled out, all of his tires went flat on his trailer, and he was just at that state of frustration where he just wanted to give up. But our PD partners went and found an air compressor, pumped him up, helped him get to the shelter, and just that little extra kindness and effort. And he's still there doing well, actually encouraging other people to come in to that shelter program because it's a pretty amazing program. And they now all of a sudden they become advocates for the program, encouraging other people, and they kind of become a face for the program. So, you know, that those stories happen over and over and over again. They just don't get told enough. So thank you for asking.
Well, thank you both for sharing. It looks like we lost Ross somewhere along the way. I don't know if it was a bad connection there, but I appreciate you taking the time to share. And it's tough because it's such a visual problem that we cannot ignore. And a lot of times when you see someone with a sign panhandling on a street corner, that's something that people just drive past. But to have this massive encampment that has become the zone in Phoenix, it's not something that the city wants to be known for. It's not something that the Valley wants to be known for. We're all hopeful that we can find some solutions for these people, and it's awesome to hear both of you sharing your firsthand stories about being in the trenches and trying to make those differences. Not going to happen overnight, but we're thankful that we have so many organizations that are working together on this. So Scott and Richard, thank you so much for sharing with us, and this is going to be available to watch in its entirety on azfamily.com and our news app. Thank you for joining us for this roundtable discussion on the zone.
Thank you for having us. And Richard, thank you for your organization.